Hello, welcome to Module 2 of the State Review Panel Training, Instructional Materials Reviews in Texas. This is Amy Williams, Review and Adoption Director in the Instructional Materials and Implementation Division. This training takes approximately 15 minutes. You will learn about the State Board of Education's review and adoption process, the Texas Resource Review, and the scope of the review you'll be completing. I do suggest that you have note-taking materials available. Let's start with the SBOE's review and adoption process. When districts select instructional materials from the SBOE's adopted list, they do so with confidence in the extent to which they provide instruction in the required TEKS or TPG, their availability in accessible formats without cost for students with print disabilities, their availability at an established cost for at least 8 years, and that they can be easily and conveniently ordered through the state's online instructional materials ordering system known as EMAT. For subjects in the K-12 curriculum, the State Board initiates a review and revision of the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, or TEKS. For pre-kindergarten, those standards are not under the purview of the State Board. Rather, the Commissioner convened a committee in the fall of 2015 to review and revise the pre-kindergarten guidelines and to ensure that the guidelines align with the kindergarten TEKS. Those new standards were effective for the 2016-17 school year. Once new standards are in place, the State Board considers a need for new instructional materials. If they find that the changes were significant enough to render the currently adopted instructional materials ineffective, they will issue a proclamation. A proclamation is an official solicitation for new instructional materials. It identifies the subject areas and courses to be included and contains a schedule of adoption procedures and publisher requirements. Proclamations are always named for the year in which the instructional materials are planned to enter classrooms. Once the proclamation is issued, publishers begin developing instructional materials for consideration that align to the new standards. And TEA facilitates an instructional materials review, which is what you're here to do. State review panels are composed of educators, parents, industry representatives, and other subject matter experts. They review instructional materials and document findings that include the TEKS or TPG coverage, factual errors, and feedback that are then shared with the Commissioner, SBOE, school districts, and the public. Around the same time, materials are available for public review. Members of the public are also encouraged to participate in the process. Print pre-kindergarten samples are available for review at TEA in the Instructional Materials and Implementation Division and at each of the 20 ESCs. Samples are digital for all other subject areas and are posted to the TEA website for review. Written comments and reports of alleged factual errors may be submitted to TEA by any Texas resident. Interested parties may also provide public testimony to the SBOE at the public hearing during the September meeting following the review. TEA presents reports to the State Board of Education. These reports include the Report of Required Corrections, which presents errors reported by the state review panels and publishers, and the list of instructional materials eligible for adoption, which includes all materials that cover at least 50% of the TEKS or TPG. When these reports are posted, state review panels are released from the no contact period. We will also present any written comment received from the public. Then the SBOE takes a vote to adopt instructional materials. In order to be eligible for adoption, instructional materials must cover at least 50% of the TEKS or TPG, comply with required manufacturing standards, including accessibility standards, be suitable for the intended subject and grade level, and be reviewed by academic experts. Publishers begin working to correct errors and submit bids which contain packaging and pricing information for districts. The Commissioner contracts for the creation of accessible versions of print materials, and publishers submit special files to produce accessible materials and a report to verify compliance of digital materials. Next, districts review and select instructional materials, which are then adopted by their school board. Every district must have its own local policy to govern the review of instructional materials, and the materials must be selected by the school board or governing body in an open meeting. Districts must certify annually that they have instructional materials that cover 100% of the TEKS for each subject and course in the required curriculum before gaining access to allotment funds. Once the materials are adopted by the school board, textbook coordinators are then authorized to order instructional materials. When it's time to place orders, adopted materials can be ordered in EMAT or directly through the publisher. When ordered through EMAT, districts submit what's called a requisition. TEA pulls funds from the district's allotment to pay publishers, and the publishers ship the materials directly to the district. When ordering adopted or non-adopted materials directly with the publisher or vendor, districts pay for the materials and submit what's called a disbursement request in EMAT to pull funds from their allotment. This time next summer, TEA will confirm that all the corrections in the report of required corrections were made by publishers. The publishers will ship any instructional materials ordered, and teachers will begin using those materials in the classroom. The State Board adopted new rules at its November 2019 meeting that allow publishers to submit updated correlations and new content to improve their official TEKS or TPG percentage in adopted materials. The Commissioner is responsible for determining the schedule by which publishers submit new correlations and new content, which is then reviewed at the next State Review Panel meeting. Now let's look at the proclamation schedule. As you already know, Proclamation 2021 includes a call for pre-kindergarten systems, and those materials are scheduled to go into classrooms in August of 2021. The board issued Proclamation 2022 at its April 2020 meeting and included a call for instructional materials for health and teacher materials for PE. Those materials will be available in the classroom for the 2022-23 school year. We expect the board to issue Proclamation 2023 for K-12 science and some CTE courses in April 2021. Those materials would be available for the 23-24 school year. And Proclamation 2024 is scheduled to include technology applications for elementary and middle school and additional CTE courses that are yet to be determined. Now let's take a look at the Texas Resource Review. In 2017, the Texas Legislature passed a law requiring the Commissioner to create a web portal to assist districts in selecting instructional materials. Before placing materials on the web portal, the legislation requires TEA to facilitate an independent review of the materials to assess quality. Materials are selected for the TRR in one of three ways. Publishers can voluntarily submit materials. 10% of districts can make a request to have materials included, or the SBOE votes by majority. The SBOE voted at the September 2019 meeting to require all materials submitted in response to a proclamation also be reviewed through TRR. Therefore, all materials submitted in response to Proclamation 2021 will be reviewed through TRR. Now let's look at the TRR process. We begin this process by developing a Texas-specific quality rubric designed for Texas standards. We recruit, select, and train diverse teams of Texas educators, including teachers and administrators, to serve as reviewers. These reviewers meet weekly to reach consensus as they evaluate materials and collect evidence, and then draft their reviews. Those reviews are validated by ESCs to ensure that the reports include proper evidence to support the scores. Publishers are given an opportunity to respond and revise their materials, and the final quality reviews are published on the Texas Resource Review website. To give you an idea of how the timeline looks for pre-K, the rubric was available for public comment in October of 2019, and the final version was released that winter. In January of this year, the publisher application opened and it closed in March. This month, reviewers will begin the quality review, and those review results will be published this November. The quality rubric is divided into 4 categories. The first category, SBOE review, is the category you're responsible for. This category results in a percentage of TEKS and ELFs or TPG covered and establishes if materials meet requirements for the stated option. The next 3 categories are the responsibility of quality reviewers. Content and instructional concepts determine how well standards are addressed and evaluates guidance for effective teaching and learning specific to the content. Educator supports focuses on aspects of instructional materials that directly relate to tools and resources for supporting instruction, and on guidance and support students and educators need to ensure all students learn and succeed. The final category includes additional information on technology, cost, professional learning, and additional language supports. If you want to learn more, please visit www.texasresourcereview.org. Now let's talk about the TEKS update and TRR products that you'll be reviewing. Publishers with materials adopted under Proclamation 2019 and 2020 were offered an opportunity to improve their TEKS percentage by providing new content or new citations for the student expectations not covered in their original submission. You'll review the new content and new citations for products in elementary English and Spanish language arts and reading and high school personal financial literacy. In addition to the materials submitted in response to a proclamation or TEKS update, reviewers also determined the TEKS or TPG percentage for materials reviewed through TRR. If the materials being reviewed through TRR are already on the SBOE's adopted list, TRR will use the alignment report generated by the original State Review Panel. The July State Review Panel will determine the TEKS alignment of non-adopted materials in foundational literacy for grades K through 2 and mathematics for grades K through 5. The June State Review Panel determined the TPG alignment for pre-kindergarten materials. I hope you now have a better understanding of instructional materials in Texas. If you have any questions, please feel free to submit an instructional materials help desk ticket. Thank you and have a great day.